Someone, I don't know who, perhaps you will know, said, "You must come to one of our conferences about world catastrophes in human memory. Man was around, things in the sky impinged on the biosphere, and all hell broke loose." And for whatever reason, perhaps you two will know best, he went. But he was somewhat bored, according to Scott Mainwaring. Scott is a lovely man with a ponytail who lives in Montana, the son of Bruce Mainwaring, an older man in Pennsylvania, to whom we are much indebted. Scott, when I was at the Paris conference, afterwards I think he and I became a flaneur on the streets of Paris, and he told me the following amazing anecdote. Tony Peratt, let me try to imitate him, was so bored by these catastrophes. When he was, checking his email and so on, he suddenly looked up at the screen and said, "Oh my God, the shapes on that screen are my shapes generated in my plasma lab, and they're top secret. Someone has hacked into my computer, and I am going to be, kicked out of Los Alamos." He was terrified. What had happened? And he said, "What are you showing up there?" And someone, the presenter, you may know, perhaps Dave Talbot, said, "Petroglyphs." And Tony Peratt said, "But these," I don't know what he said, but he knew immediately that these were the same shapes as he had generated in the plasma lab. He has about 81 shapes that morph from one to another depending on the amount of electric current he applies. And he was seeing one after another of these shapes in early man's writing, drawing, pictographs, glyphs. So they began to talk, and within a year he was converted to the fact that early man was looking up there and seeing plasma shapes morph from one into another. And so he got a team, and he decided to check out some petroglyphs. I believe Ami was a great factor in saying that in Italy, Val Camonica, is the hugest petroglyph collection in Europe. So Tony and team went down for that. Long story short, he now has, in the hundreds of thousands, petroglyphs all over the habitable continents, which he studied, photographed, and put a GPS on. And they're all facing the same direction, southeast of the South Pole of our Earth. He concludes in his published work, which is highly technical, in the International Engineering and Electrical something, which you have to pay to subscribe to, and I did. He concludes that in the Stone Age, something like an aurora borealis in the southeast of the South Pole, in the sky, 1,000 times as great as ours, was up there, was awesome to early man. They recorded it, and it would morph from one shape into another over some certain amount of time. Now, can I pause and ask Ami and Al if you know at what conference and what year and what presenter he saw when he looked up from checking his email, who he asked, and the answer was petroglyphs?
No,
was it important?
I don't know.
I imagine it.
I heard that story from Ian Tressman.
So it's the same story.
We were not there. We were certainly not there.
All right. So I would suspect it's Dave Talbot in Portland, where they've had these conferences like yours, Al, on and off for years. Because Dave Talbot, who has been studying mythology ever since 1970 at least, and Wal Thornhill, who is a plasma physicist, connected, and together they have published a series of books. This one, 2005, has in the back a DVD from which you'll see selections. And then, in 2009, really not so long ago at all, Dave narrated, you all made appearances in this DVD, from which you'll also see selections, Symbols of an Alien Sky. Look at the desert southwest of the United States. Look at something in the sky you don't see there now, but is recorded in thousands of petroglyphs and other things around the world. The alien sky is the sky in the past, and something happened to make these things disappear. Now, the final player, before I make my homage to these great predecessors, is the assistant and now independent scholar Marinus Antony von der Schliess. We call him Renz. Renz was on his team, Tony Peratz. There are many wonderful pictures of him in all the continents, beaming enthusiasm as he puts a GPS on one of these 200,000 petroglyphs. And Renz has just come out with his magnum opus, which is in 4 volumes. The title for the 4 volumes is Traditional Cosmology, the Global Mythology of Cosmic Creation and Destruction. Volume 1, which I have, has a 60-page preliminaries on methodology, which Al has taught us is essential, and he learned it in Chicago, right? So we know what his methodology is, so he set it out. Then the first volume proper is formation, the second is functions, the third is differentiation, and the last is disintegration. Disintegration of what, you may ask? Surely, well, I haven't read it yet, it will be of these great forms in the sky which for a certain amount of time man could look at without anything but awe because it wasn't affecting the earth. But we don't see it now, it must have disintegrated, and its disintegration is the subject of, I would say, Al's Chaos and Creation and Solaria Binaria, the first 2 books in the 10-volume Quantavolution series. Velikovsky, in his Worlds in Collision, has some version of 1 episode of it. Dave Talbot, in his The Saturn Myth, has another. And suffice it to say that Tony Perat has decided not to go further with this just now for various reasons. And Renz is working on it, but even these 4 volumes are not the exciting scenario. They are an encyclopedia of traditional mythology assembled from everywhere around the habitable earth, and only if they are universal, not diffused, but to be found in places which would never diffuse to each other, like the Aborigines in Australia and the Greeks. Right? So, he is, as he puts it, assembling data the way an Indo-European linguist would assemble words and see the cognate structure and root and reconstruct a Proto-Indo-European language. You first have to assemble the words that are in the family together. That's what these 4 volumes are. And who knows, will Renz then write a volume that tells us what he and Tony Perat have talked about but never published. How this great Aurora Borealis, mega Aurora Borealis, disintegrated and affected mankind, and, my friends in the back, caused deluges and conflagrations and combats in the sky like St. Michael and the dragon. I was telling them that's what this conference is about. So, all the catastrophes over which our common ancestor in the venture, Immanuel Velikovsky, labored, Al labored, and Talbot labored, are waiting to be given a fresh interpretation with the specific use of these plasma physics shapes.